Hello students of class 4th. I hope you all are fit and fine at home. Children, today we will be going to read chapter 6 Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Children, in chapter 5 Gulliver's Travels, we had already read how Gulliver was appointed as ship's doctor on the ship Antelope. And while crossing South Seas, their ship hit by a violent storm. And 12 of their crew members died and rest of 6 crew members also scattered into different directions when a strong blast of wind turned down their lifeboat. Gulliver struggled a lot to save his life and swam for many hours and reached to the seashore. When he reached the shore, it was 8 p.m. and he was very tired, so he slept soundly immediately. Children, are you curious to know what had happened next? So, to know the story, we have to read the chapter number 6, Gulliver in the land of Lilliput. Children, I am going to read the first paragraph of the chapter. I must have slept for about 9 hours, for when I woke up it was daylight. I tried to get up, but I couldn't move. My arms and legs were tied to pegs fastened into the ground. Thin, strong cords were tied across my body and attached to pegs in the ground. My long hair was spread out and tied down in the same manner. Here in these lines, Gulliver is telling us, when he reached to the shore, he was very tired and immediately he fell down and slept for 9 hours. For 9 hours he slept. The moment he got up, it was daytime. So when he got up, it was daytime. But arms and legs were tied to the pegs and fastened into the ground. He could not move his body. He was tied with thin and strong cords. His whole body was tied with thin, strong cords. You can see in the picture also how his body was tied and fastened with pegs in the ground. Gulliver had long hair and his hair was spread out and tied with the pegs. So he could not move even his face, arms and legs. Now children, open page number 46. First paragraph of page number 46. All I could do was to stare upwards at the sun, blinking to ease the pain on my already strained eyes. Suddenly I heard strange noises around me, but I couldn't move to find out what they were or where they were coming from. Now imagine children, if anyone cannot move his face, where he could see? Only upward towards the sky. अगर कोई आपके फेस को भी बांधे तो टाई कर दे तो आप कहाँ पर देख पाओगे? सिर्फ ऊपर की तरफ. So Gulliver also was able to see only upward towards the sky, and in that position sunlight was falling directly on his face and he was blinking his eyes to ease the pain or uncomfort. So when sunlight was coming or falling directly on his face, so he was blinking. Blinking means closing and opening. Close, open, close, open. Eyes को जब हम बार बार ओपन और क्लोज करते हैं तो उसको कहते हैं ब्लिंकिंग. सो ही वॉज ब्लिंकिंग हिज आइज टू ईज द पेन और अनकम्फर्ट ही वॉज फीलिंग. तो बहुत अनकम्फर्ट वो फील कर रहा था बिकॉज हिज आइज वर ऑलरेडी स्ट्रेन्ड. स्ट्रेन मीन्स स्ट्रेस्ड, टायर्ड, थकी हुई थी. बहुत टाइम तक वो स्विम करके आया था. सो ब्लिंकिंग मीन्स क्लोज एंड open the eyes. He was not comfortable in that position. To reduce the pain, He was blinking his eyes again and again. Then suddenly he noticed that some strange noises are coming around him, but he couldn't move his face to see from where the voices are coming. Now next paragraph. The next moment, I felt something alive moving on my leg. It progressed over my stomach and onto my chest, stopping just below my chin. I lowered my eyes downward as much as I could, hoping to see what sort of insect was crawling on me. Then I suddenly gasped. Why, it's a human creature barely 6 inches tall. In these lines, Gulliver said, after he heard strange, unfamiliar noises. Unfamiliar, strange means जो noises, जो आवाज़ें उसने कभी नहीं सुनी थी. So when he heard strange or unfamiliar noises, he felt something is moving on his body. उसके बाद उसने क्या महसूस किया? He felt something is moving on his body, and something means just like insect. कोई insect या छोटा सा कोई क्रिएचर उसकी बॉडी पर चल रहा है, उसको ऐसा महसूस हुआ. Children, have you ever experienced any insect moving on your hand or any body part? The same feeling Gulliver felt, that something is moving on his legs. But it was not clear what it was, because he could not see anything except the sky. वो देख नहीं पा रहा था क्योंकि उसके तो हेयर भी बंधे हुए थे और उसका फेस भी बंधा हुआ था. सो ही वॉज नॉट एबल टू सी विच टाइप ऑफ क्रिएचर वॉज दैट विच वॉज मूविंग ऑन हिज बॉडी. नाउ गुलिवर फेल्ट दैट द सेम थिंग वॉज kept on moving towards his stomach. Then the creature could not stop there. It was moving, and it was gradually moving towards its chest and then stopped below his chin. अब जो क्रिएचर छोटा सा उसकी बॉडी पर चल रहा था, वो धीरे धीरे चलता हुआ वो रुका नहीं, वो उसके स्टमक पर आ गया और स्टमक से होता हुआ वो उसके चेस्ट पर आया और उसके बाद उसकी चिन के पास आकर रुक गया. Children, isn't it interesting story? Now children, Gulliver could not move his face, but only the part which he could move was eyes. Because eyes could not be tied, and he tried to see that what type of insect or creature was crawling on him. बेटा, जब हम फेस अपना मूव नहीं कर पाते, लेकिन हम अपनी आइज़ तो मूव कर सकते हैं. आइज़ को तो कोई टाई नहीं कर सकता. तो उसने अपनी आइज़ को मूव करके, जितना भी वो मूव कर सकता था, मूव करके उसने नीचे की ओर देखा, चिन की ओर उसने अपने आइज़ को करके देखा. तो उसने क्या देखा? He saw that there was a human being, but only 6 inches tall. He was so surprised to see that type of human being, because he had not seen this type of human being, human creature any time before, and the human being was 6 inches tall only. Third paragraph of page number 46. This creature had a bow and arrow in his hands and was followed by 40 more creatures like him. I was so surprised that I let out a frightful roar. All the creatures ran helter-skelter and jumped off my body in terror. Here in these lines, Gulliver is saying that added to his surprise, the human creature who was only 6 inches tall and had a bow and arrow. He was also followed by around 40 more creatures like him, and they had bows and arrows in their hands. So Gulliver was shocked to see these types of creature who had bows and arrows in their hands. So A frightful or scary sound came of his mouth. When the creatures heard Gulliver's voice, and Gulliver's voice means when he was shocked and screamed to see the frightful or scary scene, they became scared. Who are they? The creatures of that place. They also became scared and scattered in different directions in panic. And in kiosk, they jumped off or jumped down his body. They had been climbing his body, and 40 or more than 40 creatures were crawling on his body. So when they heard Gulliver screaming in shock, they jumped off his body. They also became scared. Now, last paragraph of this page. After some time, they gathered courage and climbed back onto my body. This time, one of them even clambered onto my chin to get a closer look at me. He let out a screech of excitement. Hekina Degul. Hekina Degul, repeated the crowd after. Now, children, when the creatures heard the scary sound coming out of Gulliver's mouth, they also became scared because Gulliver was also strange for them. So, but after some time, they again gathered their courage and climbed again on Gulliver's body. And one of the creatures climbed with very difficulty on Gulliver's chin. And as soon as the creature looked Gulliver very closely, he shouted with excitement. अब उनमें से एक जो था जिसने कि अपना करेज फिर से गैदर किया और उसकी चिन के ऊपर चढ़ने में जो था वो सक्सेसफुल हो गया, और जब उसने पास से गलिवर को देखा तो वो भी शॉक्ड रह गया गलिवर को. He shouted with excitement, Hekina Degul, Hekina Degul. And he saw a giant man. He was also scared and he screamed after having the close look. He shouted in excitement. Children, we will be reading page number 47. First paragraph. I didn't give too much attention to their words. I was more concerned with setting myself free. By twisting and turning and pulling and pushing, I managed to pull out the pegs that were holding my left arm down. With one arm free, I was able to free my hair and turn my head to the right. In the last paragraph, we had already read that when the giant man, Gulliver, was seen by the creature, he screamed, what he screamed? Hekina Degul. And the moment the crowd listened, crowd means the people of that place, they were also gathered there. When they listened, saying him Hekina Degul, they also repeated after him, Hekina Degul. But Gulliver did not pay attention to what the creatures were shouting because he was not able to know the language they were speaking, because he did not know their language. His main concern was to free himself, to free his body from the ropes or strings. So what Gulliver did? Gulliver did to free himself, he started twisting and turning his body. He pushed and pulled, and somehow he pulled the pegs and then able to free himself. So what he did? He pushed and pulled himself, and twisting and by turning, he was able to free his left arm. Then he freed his hair. When he freed his left arm, so first thing he did that he freed his hair, and now he could turn his head to see his right side. Now next paragraph. There were cries of panic from the little creatures, and suddenly hundreds of tiny arrows hit my left hand, pricking me like hundreds of needles. When arrows began striking my face, I groaned with pain and raised my left hand to protect myself. They also started jabbing spears at my sides. Luckily for me, my jacket was thick and prevented me from getting severely injured. When little creatures saw that Gulliver is trying to free himself, so he was just like a giant for them. They started screaming and shouting in panic or fear because Gulliver was also strange for them. So as I already told you that creature had bows and arrows in their hands. So in panic they started hitting the small arrows which were needle sized on my left side. On my left side means on Gulliver's left side. These all things are told by Gulliver. Gulliver is telling his own story. So Gulliver is saying that they started hitting arrows on his left hand, and when the needle like arrows started pricking Gulliver's face, he cried out with pain and he raised his left hand to protect his face and body. Then the creatures started poking spears. Spears का मतलब क्या होते हैं? वो भाले होते हैं, भाला. आपने देखा होगा कि कोई एक वुडन स्टिक और मेटल स्टिक के आगे शार्प जो टूल होता है उसको लगा दिया जाता है. That is called spear. So they started poking spears, a long stick with one sharp end, on both of my sides. But Gulliver was lucky enough because he was wearing thick jacket. The jacket saved him from getting severely injured. Now last paragraph of page number 47. I thought to myself that the wisest thing to do would be to lie still until night. So I stopped struggling and the arrows stopped coming, but soon I heard another loud noise near my right ear. It was like a banging, like people at work. I turned as much as I could and saw about 50 of the creatures setting up a platform a foot and a half above the ground. Now story is taking an interesting turn. You saw that in panic, the small creatures, 6 inches tall creatures, started poking spears and hitting arrows on Gulliver's body. So he was severely injured. Then Gulliver understood. He thought that it is better to lay till night. उसने सोचा कि अगर मैं ज़्यादा कोशिश करूँगा तो ये मुझे बार बार और भी हिट करेंगे और मैं और भी इंजर्ड हो जाऊँगा. तो इट्स बेटर टू वेट फॉर नाइट. रात का मैं इंतज़ार करता हूँ और जब नाइट होगी तब मैं कोशिश करूँगा जब कोई मुझे देख नहीं पाएगा. The Gulliver understood that if he would try to free himself, they will poke hundreds of arrows and spears in his body. So he thought of better to wait for the night. When he stopped his activity to free himself, the creatures also stopped hitting the arrows. तो जब उसने अपने को फ्री करने की कोशिश बंद कर दी तो क्रिएचर्स ने भी उसके ऊपर एरोज डालना हिट करना बंद कर दिया. Suddenly he heard another loud noise which was coming from his right side. तो अब क्या था, उसके हेयर तो अब फ्री हो चुके थे और वो राइट साइड थोड़ा सा देख सकता था. तो उसने क्या देखा कि he heard another loud noise. उसको अपनी राइट साइड कुछ नॉइज आती हुई, शोर आता हुआ सुनाई दिया. The voice was just like people are working together to construct anything. ऐसा लग रहा था कि पीपल कुछ बना रहे हों, कुछ कंस्ट्रक्शन चल रहा हो. So Gulliver tried to move his head to see from where the voice was coming. तो गलिवर ने ये कोशिश की देखने की कहाँ से आवाज़ आ रही है. He make out see that about 50 creatures were constructing a structure. एक स्ट्रक्चर बना रहे हैं वो, प्लेटफॉर्म जैसा. They are constructing a platform about 1.5 foot high. और वो कितना ऊंचा है? 1.5 फुट मीन्स 18 इंचेस. आप ही सोचो, इमेजिन कि आपका 12 इंचेस का स्केल होता है और एक 6 इंचेस का. अगर उसको जितना मिला दिया जाए तो उतनी हाइट का वो प्लेटफॉर्म बना रहे थे. उनके लिए तो वो ही बहुत बड़ा था क्योंकि दे वर ओनली 6 इंचेस टॉल. Now children, turn your book on page number 48. First paragraph. Soon 4 of them climbed up ladders and stood on the platform. In the middle was an important looking man. He made a long speech looking in my direction, and of course I didn't understand a word of it. But I could tell from the tone of his voice that some words were threats, others promises, and still other reassurances, especially when he pointed all around and repeated over and over, Lilliput, Lilliput. In the last paragraph, we saw that about 50 creatures were constructing a structure or platform about 1.5 feet high. So 4 little creatures, very soon, 4 little creatures of them climbed up the ladders. Ladders means सीढ़ी. सीढ़ी के ऊपर चढ़ गए. And reached to the platform. And they reached to the platform. And an important looking man stood in between those creatures. और उनके बीच में एक important looking man, maybe their leader, maybe their king or emperor, stood in between those creatures. उन चारों के बीच में जाकर खड़ा हो गया. And started giving speech looking at Gulliver. और गलिवर को देखकर स्पीच देने लगा. Gulliver could not understand their language, but with their tone, Gulliver understood that the words were some warning to the Gulliver. उसको ये समझ में आ गया, उसको लैंग्वेज तो नहीं समझ में आती थी, लेकिन इतना समझ में आ गया कि वो जो वर्ड्स थे कुछ वार्निंग के वर्ड्स थे, वो वॉर्न कर रहे थे. सम प्रॉमिसेस ऑल्सो, उसमें कुछ वर्ड्स प्रॉमिस करते हुए थे जो कि वो अपने पीपल को बोल रहे थे कि आई विल सेव यू, किसी भी कंडीशन में जो जायंट है उससे मैं आपको सेव करूँगा. तो इस तरीके के प्रॉमिसेस के भी उसको समझ में आ रहा था कि वो बोल रहे थे. सो सम प्रॉमिसेस टूवर्ड्स देयर पीपल एंड रीअश्योरेंसेस दैट ही विल नॉट लेट हिज पीपल डू एनी हार्म. और जो भी वर्ड्स थे वो रीअश्योर कर रहे थे. वो जो लीडर था वो ये बोल रहा था कि मैं आपको कुछ नहीं होने दूंगा. आई विल नॉट लेट हिज पीपल डू एनी हार्म. ही वुड सेव हिज पीपल एनी हाउ, किसी भी हालत में मैं अपने पीपल को सेव करूँगा, ऐसा वो बोल रहा होगा. बिकॉज चिल्ड्रन, गलिवर वॉज ऑल्सो स्ट्रेंज क्रिएचर फॉर देम. They were very small and Gulliver was like giant for them. They wanted that Gulliver would act according to their wish. If he would not do, they would punish him. So, over and over, they were shouting, Lilliput, 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 as we all shout whenever India is playing cricket match. India, India. The same way they were shouting Lilliput, Lilliput again and again. Now second paragraph of page number 48. So I was in a place called Lilliput, though I had never heard of such a country or seen it on a map. I tried to answer the important looking man and tell him that I was a friend and meant no harm. I even raised my eyes and hands to heaven to make my promise stronger. The last time I had eaten was hours before the ship sank, so I had to show these people that I was hungry. I did it by putting my fingers into my mouth as I spoke. Now, when the people of Lilliput were shouting, Lilliput, Lilliput, now Gulliver make out or Gulliver understood that the name of the place was Lilliput. He had not seen the name of any country ever before. And moreover, both Gulliver and small creatures could not understand their language. So Gulliver tried to make them assure with sign language that he would not do any harm to them. Gulliver was very hungry. At that time, he had not eaten food at, since the ship sank. Ship name was Antelope. So when Antelope sank, before it he had eaten some food. So he was very hungry. So he showed them sign language. Which sign language you use when you show that you are hungry? The same thing he did. He put his finger into his mouth to show them that he was hungry. Now third paragraph of page number 48. The Great Hergo. As I later learned, this important lord was called, understood my signs, and shouted out orders to the crowd below. 100 little people immediately placed ladders at my sides and climbed up on my body with baskets full of meat and bread, which they dumped into my mouth. This was the food that their emperor had ordered as soon as he had received word of my arrival. Now, with sign language, Gulliver tried to show them that he was hungry. To Gulliver's great surprise, the leader of the creatures was called by his people, and he understood his sign language. Most probably, the leader of that Lilliput place was intelligent enough. So he was called out to understand what the sign language Gulliver is using. So he understood everything. He ordered his people of Lilliput, to bring food for Gulliver. Immediately, hundreds of people placed ladders on both of his sides and started climbing on Gulliver's body with baskets full of meat and bread. They poured the food into his mouth. Who ordered to give food to Gulliver? Emperor of Lilliput. Who ordered? Emperor of Lilliput ordered to give food to Gulliver. Now fourth paragraph of this page number 48. When I signaled that I was also thirsty, they rolled a barrel up a ladder and across my chest. Then they poured a delicious liquid that tasted like wine. But their barrel was only equal to a cup. And after they had given me a second barrel, they showed me that they had no more. I was grateful to these creatures. They had treated me generously. Now children, the people of Lilliput dumped or poured too much food into Gulliver's mouth. Now it was time to drink something, drink water. So Gulliver was also thirsty, and Gulliver gives signal that he is thirsty also. So when the important looking man understood what he is giving signal, he also told his people to bring something to drink. So people of Lilliput brought a barrel. Barrel means drum. And drum means हमारा ड्रम तो कितना बड़ा होता है, तो उनका ड्रम कितना बड़ा था? उनका ड्रम तो एक कप के बराबर था, छोटे से कप के बराबर था. So they rolled that barrel rolled that drum on his chest and poured a delicious liquid which was tasted like wine. और वो जो ड्रम था उसके अंदर क्या था, एक बहुत ही डिलीशियस लिक्विड था जो कि वाइन के जैसा टेस्ट कर रहा था. As the creatures were very small, so their barrel was also equal to their size of the cup. And after pouring second barrel, they signaled Gulliver that they had no liquid at all left with them. और दूसरा जब ड्रम उन्होंने उसके माउथ में पॉर कर दिया गलीवर के, उसके बाद उन्होंने सिग्नल दिया कि अब उनके पास और नहीं बचा है. अब वो जो बैरल उनका एक कप के बराबर था, उनके लिए तो पूरे मंथ वो चलता सारे लोगों के लिए, लेकिन गलीवर वॉज जाइंट फॉर देम. So 2 drums of liquid they poured into Gulliver's mouth. After that, they signaled that they had no other drum, no other liquid left with them. But Gulliver was thankful to the creatures who gave him food to eat and delicious drink and treated him kindly. So children, this was a story written by Jonathan Swift. Read the story again and again and enjoy reading it.